What up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Let's Ask Paul, the podcast where you can ask me, Paul Abernathy, anything you want about the National Electrical Code and all things electrically related. Thanks for joining me on today's show. We have a great one today for all of you out there who maybe you're somebody in high school. Maybe you're in one career and you want to shift to another career, something like that. Maybe you're thinking of making a career move. And you hear that the life as an electrician is glamorous and that's where you want to be. But you want to know how you get started or what my recommendations. So today's episode, I'm going to do top 5 things that really can help you decide whether or not you want to get into this trade. Now, I will tell you, obviously we live the glamorous life. Yeah, but, in all seriousness, electricians is being an electrician is one of the proudest things I've ever done in this profession. Is just having the ability to originally starting out in the industry was, working with my hands and the ability to create things and be in demand. And I learned early on that while I went to college later, early on when I wanted to get out of high school and wanted to get right into the working world, I realized that, I had options when it became a trade. And of course, I started in the electrical program while I was back in high school. So I was, there's a shout out to the Charlottesville Albemarle Vocational Tech School. That's where I started. Since then, it doesn't have a dedicated electrical program, but it did back when I was there. And my instructor was Bob Barrett, who was my mentor. And he was a great guy. He was like a second father figure to me through the years. But when I got started, I was not always the best teenager, right? I always didn't do what I was told, hated authority, all this kind of stuff, yada, yada, yada. And it's kind of interesting that I would even have this podcast today, considering when this one releases, it will be the 11th anniversary of my father's passing, who, probably wasn't sure that electrical was the thing that I should go into back then, although he didn't care as long as I was working. He didn't care. But it was really, he didn't understand the relationship that I had with my electrical instructor, but he respected it and he supported it. And when I went into business for myself, it was my dad who actually helped me out. My mom was like, dude, you're all over the place and I'm not going to invest in you right now. And I get it. I wouldn't have either. But my dad did, and he believed in me, and he helped me where he could, and got me into it, and not really in the electrical business, but helped me get the equipment I needed for my first business. I paid him back in about 6 months after getting into business, and it was great to be able to do that. That pride of being able to pay him back, but at least he gave me the opportunity. So I learned early on that electrical is where I wanted to be. That was the profession that I wanted to be into. So in doing that, I started and I went to, like I said, I went to a vocational school. And in that vocational school is where I learned how to do the hands-on stuff, right? How to, run the circuits, bend conduit and tubing and learn all those type of things, the hands-on. And it was a 2-year program. And that's how I got started. Now, some of you out there who are wondering that are in the, want to get into this trade, and they're like, how do I get started into it? I understand you went to a vocational school. And if you have that opportunity and you're a teenager, don't let them push college down your throat. I know quite a few college graduates who are struggling to find jobs, and they don't make as much as an electrician. And there's a lot of opportunities for electricians, whether you want to do residential, commercial, industrial, service work only, you want to do smart homes, whatever, there's an opportunity, generator work, whether or not, there's so many avenues that you can pick your specialty if you want. If you just want to do residential, or maybe you want to do commercial / residential and just do multifamily housing, it's up to you. You get to pick your path. But we all start from the same thing, the same fundamentals. Now, I'm here to tell you that you're going to learn early on. You're going to hear people say, well, you must learn Ohm's law. You must learn all the. Okay, that's just foundational stuff that you will not, for the most part, will not use the rest of your electrical career. And if you do, we have apps for that. We have calculators for that. Okay, so I'm not here to have people that are out there in the trade, and there are plenty of them that want to scare you and say, "Oh no, you got to learn all these algebraic equations. They're full of shit. Don't listen to them." Okay, I'm here to tell you that don't listen to them. You don't need that. You do have to have a good foundational understanding of the National Electrical Code, well beyond all of that stuff about formulas. Okay, all that stuff can be sorted out with an app on your phone. But when it comes to the code, there are certain things that you're going to be doing while you're immersed in the work, learning with your hands, working on something as a helper or an apprentice, that you're going to wonder, why do I secure this cable this many feet? Why can't I go further? I mean, why can't I do this? Why can't I do that? Well, if I'm running it in the ceiling over joists, why do I have to secure it? I mean, it's supported, but why do I have to secure it? So there's so many little things that you're ultimately going to do in your career that you're wondering why you do it. And that's why you learn the National Electrical Code. But let's kind of back it up a little bit and kind of give you a little bit of an introduction. My name's Paul Abernathy. If you don't know who I am, I'm the CEO and founder of Electrical Code Academy. I've been working in the electrical industry for just at 40 years. I've worked as a journeyman electrician, master electrician. I worked as a helper while I was in school. I grew up to start a company with my brother, and competed in the VICA contests and did very well. I ended up branching off and opening my own electrical contracting businesses away from my brother, who incidentally still in electrical contracting business even now in his 60s. And so I branched off and did mine, and I did it in both Virginia and in Texas. So through the years, I've been the electrical plans examiner. I have been the electrical engineer too for a major city, the capital city in Virginia. I was a code supervisor in Northern Virginia for a large, I wouldn't say large, but the city is adjacent to DC, and a lot of the politicians live there, and so you kind of get an idea. Then I also worked for NEMA, the National Electrical Manufacturers Association, as a Southern field representative. Basically, we're the NEC code experts, and there was 4 of us around the country. I handled 13 states in the South, and they were under my purview, means that I would travel around teaching and helping manufacturers understand the code and how it's applied. And then, of course, I was able to get offered a position at Encore Wire, which is now Prismium, but it's the world's largest wiring cable manufacturer, as a director of technical services. So I oversaw their thing. And all that time, creating academies and creating lessons and training and courses and doing continuing ed. In fact, in Virginia, I was the first to create the continuing education program. I was the very first approved educator, and I helped have a part in that program. And so have a bit of a history in it. But again, I, like everybody else, started back with digging the trenches and pulling the conductors, pulling the cables, and getting the hands dirty. I've got the cuts still to prove it. Now, you go online and you do a lot of stuff, and you get, you have all these people who, what's amazing to me is I can write books, teach the code for decades now, and still have the young people go, who are you? What have you done? You don't live it. You just talk about it. You just teach it because you can't do it. It still amazes me that those people don't realize that you're going to be my age. You're going to be 50s and 60s. And you're going to have the younger generation say exactly the same thing about you, especially if you're in the limelight or you're in the know or in the talking point. So get over it. You're going to be there. Trust me. And I'm probably going to be gone, but I'm going to be up in heaven laughing going, yep, you're right there where I was. The reality is electricity, for the most part, in the code is like riding a bike. Once you learn it, you just maintain your balance and you can keep on learning. You just keep learning and you get better and better and better at it. And you have to put in that time. You have to put in that effort. So that all leads me to when people say, okay, well, what is your advice for somebody who's just getting in the trade or just wanting to get into the trade? Can you give them an advice? I say, absolutely. And one of the biggest questions I get from high school graduates, from those that are still in high school, younger folks who are in a transition, are wondering what can I do? Because I've been groomed to do this thing, college thing, or I've been groomed to do this or that, but I really see opportunity, because being an electrician is a path to being ownership of your business, to have destiny in your hand. Now, I'm not saying that's only electrical. I mean, plumbing, mechanical, they have this as well. But you have the ability to branch out in so many things, okay? Even more so with electrical because of how technical it can be. But for anybody that tells you, nah, you got to learn all kinds of complicated algebraics and all this kind of stuff, they're full of shit. Don't listen to them. Don't let that be a deterrent. You ain't got to be the best in the world at math, okay? Today, you do not, okay? So I had people say, Paul, I've got no experience, but I really want to become an electrician. Where do I start? What do I do? What is the path that I need to take? Okay. Well, number one, you need to identify that licensing path, because you can go get a job as a helper, or you can go get a job as an apprentice. And we're all going to talk about why that's important, because that's all about building the experience. But the first thing you have to identify, this is not going to be a short trip. Okay. There's no ready fixes. There's no overnight snap your fingers and you can just start doing your own thing. I mean, remember when you're wiring, and I think a lot of people out there, and I use the term electricians loosely for this, forget that anything that you do, you are putting other people's lives in your hands. Now, as cliche as that may sound, you are. You are literally putting other people's homes, their dwellings, their property, anything that they interact with when it comes to electrical. You have to do it right, whether it's bonding, whether it's grounding, whether it's GFCI, AFCI, whatever it is, you have to do it right. There's always the wolf waiting in the wings to jump on you when you do it wrong, especially if there's an incident, a fire, something happens, and they come to find out that you're the electrician that did it and you didn't do it right. And you say, well, the inspector didn't catch it. No, it's your responsibility to do it right. So that's why I tell people all the time, especially younger folks, don't joke around. Focus, because this is a profession. So the first step that I tell people all the time is, now, before you even touch a wire, before you even touch a conduit or tubing, before you even bought your first set of tools, okay, you have to understand that there's a licensing path for every state, and it is different in every state. So first thing you have to identify is, okay, before I've even done it, you're like, okay, I want to be an electrician. I know that I got some steps I have to go through. I know I've got time that I'm going to have to do. And the funny thing about time is when you're younger, you think it's infinite. And when you get in your late 40s, 50s, and 60s, you realize time is fleeting, that it goes by very quickly. And it's when you get 50s and 60s, you realize, and you look at your family history and you go, dude, I might have only 10 years left on this earth. It's a reality, sucks, but it's a reality. So the years of growth that I tell people all the time, assuming you live to 70, is to realize that your 20s and your early 30s are the point in your life where you're going to make the decisions that are going to dictate the comfort level that you have in your late 40s and 50s and 60s. And they can be wonderful years. I'm living those years. But you have to set up the foundation. And that is where you're going to absorb as much knowledge. You're going to get much hands-on as you can. You're going to dabble in doing many things. Some things will be successful. Some things will not be. But that is your learning period. So if somebody's in their late 20s, they're thinking, oh, my ship has sailed. I wasted my early 20s to get that education. It's never too late. But what we're saying is we're reaching out to the younger folks that are in their mid 20s, early 20s, early 30s. This is the time. If you're going to make a career change. Again, that does not mean somebody in their late 30s or 40s can't make a career change. You most certainly can change your career at 40 and have 30 good years in the industry. You definitely can. Don't think that I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is if you decide to make that decision and you make it early, that you have to realize that there's a period and you're going to have to put in your dues, they say. And you're like, that sucks. It seems like, take my son, for example. He's in the pool industry or wants to be in the pool industry, but he thinks it's going to happen overnight. He wants a contractor's license now, and he's got like 2 years in it. He's never done a full job by himself. And he's like, I know people, I got connections. I can do this. Just if I get a contractor's license, I can. No, that's not how it works. Okay. Certainly not how I'm not investing in that, because I think that's a recipe for failure. So the number one thing is you need to understand the licensing path. Every state is different. Sometimes even every city is different and have their own rules. Some call it a journeyman license. Other states will call it a wireman's or electrical mechanic license. It doesn't really matter. They all follow the same type of process, right? You just have to go to your state's Department of Labor or their electrical licensing board, and they have documents for this. So that's your first step. Research is look and see what is the path that you need to focus on. Like I tell people for exam prep all the time, and y'all know we create probably the most definitive exam prep experience you're going to get to try to learn the NEC for licensure. We create that. That's our Fast Tracks program. But you hear me talk about structured plans, getting from point A to B with a structure. Because that's how we logically learn things better. That's why we have grade 1, or kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. It's structure. This is not reinventing the wheel. This is structured learning. We just created an exam prep, but in the process, it helps you become a better electrician because you're learning things under a process, not just watching videos all the time. And hell, I know that I watch a video on something and within... after watching it, within a week, I've forgotten what I watched. I forgot it. It's just something about the way we're wired. You have to read it to understand it, to comprehend it. It may be dull. It may be boring. It may seem mundane. It's like, Jesus, I'm reading over and over. But it's proven for long-term success. It's proven, okay? So you don't deviate from a proven plan. Now, you enhance the plan. You add videos for confirmation. You add graphics, illustrations. You add, competency reviews. You add all this kind of stuff to kind of help you with that path, but you don't deviate from the proven path. But what you need to do is you need to really realize, what state am I in? And when I get started, I need to know, what are the hours? What are the time? What are the expectations for licensing, so that I don't deviate from that plan and then waste time. Because your goal is to follow the requirements in order to get licensed. That's your goal. That should always be your goal first, is to get that license. If you're working at somebody and you've been doing it for 10 years and you've got the time in, but you still aren't licensed yet, and you think, well, I don't need to be licensed because my state doesn't require it or who I work for, you're living a fool's dream. Get your license, whether it just sits in your wallet and it just sits there. Get your license, okay? Now, when you go to your state's licensing board and that type of thing, you're going to see that it's going to tell you how many hours it's necessary on the job. It's going to also tell you how much classroom training is required, okay? It's also going to let you know possibly what states have reciprocity with other states, okay? Which is just opens up the door. And that doesn't mean you're looking for a shortcut in one state in order to get licensed in another through reciprocity. No, most of the states' licensing going to be very similar, okay? Like some states, you have to have, certain number of years as a helper. And then you have to have 240 hours of vocational training, a legit training, whether it's doing an apprenticeship program or through a vocational school or whatnot. And then at that point, you'll accumulate the hours that's necessary, and then you can look at the hands-on. And the hands-on can be anywhere from 4,000 hours to 10,000 hours. And how do you achieve that? Well, W-2s that you work for a contractor can validate time, but you also have worksheets that many states use that will, you utilize that in order to be able to confirm, and they notarize the amount of time you've had in the trade. And so that's just a matter of putting in your time. Most places around the country, again, don't hold me to this. Every state is different. You have to look at your state. I get calls all the time and say, what are the requirements for being an electrician? I'm like, I don't know. And they get disappointed. They're like, what do you mean you don't know? I'm like, because every state is different. So some have 1,000-hour requirements of hands-on work. And then some have up to 500 hours of classroom hours before you can even take your journeyman exam. Or you can get into an apprenticeship program, IBEW, if that's your flavor, NECA type apprenticeship programs, and they will keep track of your hours and you'll go through a 3, 4, 5-year program. Now, there are also some states that maybe you've been working as an apprentice in electrical work for 10 years. Well, there's some states that will take all of that time as equivalent to the classroom, and with the signature of a master electrician that has overseen your work and it can attest to your work, then you can sit for the exam. Okay, so every state is different. And so that's the first thing that you've got to understand. And people say, well, no, let me get the time in and then I'll worry about that when I go to get licensed. That is opposite. That is not what you do. You first have to identify what the path is so that you can make sure that you don't deviate from the path. You want to put the shortest amount of time possible to get to that point where you can take an exam, and you don't want to accidentally deviate from that. You have to be laser focused. If I'm required to have 240 hours of training, vocational school, and I have to have 5,000 hours of hands-on, immediately, that's what your target is. That's what you're shooting for, okay? Immediately. That's it. That's your goal. Now, part of that way is where you're going to learn the hands-on. It's where you're going to start accumulating the knowledge and trying to retain it. That's part of the trade, okay? So it's a commitment. I mean, you have to first identify what your state requires. Now, after that, then you say, okay, this is where I need to go. I got to have the hands-on. Got it. And a lot of the programs will include some hands-on, so that starts calculating out your time. But then you also look at it and say, okay, now I need to find a program. Now, every state can be different. So some states, it may be they don't have a classroom requirement. Other states will, and they will give a list of schools that qualify. No, this is not going to be a trade where you can get it easy, okay? It's not what we're talking about here. So once you understand your path, what you need to achieve, you can start going and looking at programs. And there are programs that are union programs from IBEW, from NECA. You have non-union programs like IEC or ABC. Bunch of different types of programs. You can even start with an online code training like our Fast Tracks program. Okay. Now, whether or not that counts for any hours, that's not hands-on. So it's just going to increase your knowledge, that type of thing, right? Most of the people come to our programs after they're already accumulated the hours and they're preparing to take an electrical exam. Then they come to us because at this point they've done the hands-on. They've kind of learned a little bit about the code, but they really focus on the installation and running. They teach you different things to make you aware of how to run the business and all that stuff. Well, at that point, that's when you get into a program like our Fast Tracks program. So our program is designed to work very well with things like the IBEW, NECA, IECs, and ABC type of thing. So when you need that online training, that's where we pick up. Okay. Now, the key here is to find legitimate state-approved training programs. Okay. And that is something that your state will have a list of those that are going to help you qualify. Because you know what? If you've got to get 240 hours of training, then that has to be documented training, okay? That has to be a process that's documented, kept track of, so that they can give you your hours. And that's really something that the NECAs and IBEWs and IECs and ABCs of the world, they do that very well, okay? Now, and don't worry if you don't know a thing yet. Doesn't matter. Everybody has to start somewhere. I think the biggest thing that I see for people is they see people owning a business. They say, I can do that. I can do that. But they never actually see the behind the scenes, right? I have helpers that have worked for electrical contractors and go, shit, this is easy. I could be doing this. What do I need this guy for? But they don't have the time. They don't have the license, but they look at it and go, this. They don't realize the work that gets done behind the scenes, whether it's billing, keeping up with the company, hiring, firing, benefits. They don't see that. They never see that. Nobody ever looks at that. Nobody ever peels back that onion. They just see that, wow, I'm doing this work and he's paying me this, and I know what this, he's probably priced this job at. I could make that money. That's what everybody sees. That's the outside of the onion. They don't peel back the layers. And that's when you peel an onion, that's when you start crying, because there are other layers. There's fees, there's continuing ed training, there's local licensure, there's permits. There's so much more that people don't see. So you've got to put that time in. Now, the next thing I'll tell you is that you really, once you get into a program, the people ask me all the time, and they do this in apprenticeship programs a lot, is they wait until like the third year to start teaching the National Electrical Code. Big mistake. Big mistake. Every program should start introducing some type of electrical code training into their lessons, even the hands-on. They should be explaining why we're securing non-metallic sheath cable every 4.5 feet. They should be explaining when you're bending a raceway. They should be explaining this. And so there is, whether you know it or not, you're actually getting code. But instead of saying it in these schools, I'll tell you, instead of just saying it to say it, right? They need to say it and put a code reference behind it so that you start learning that. And why do I say that? Because at some point, you're going to have to take a licensing exam. And at some point, you want to be able to be fluent and understand why you're doing what you're doing. So my next advice is, if you find a program, you get into it, they start to teach you the program, and even if you're in a state where you don't have a program requirement or hours, technical, vocational school, or some type of training, that type of thing that's documented, maybe they just say that you got to work 4 years for a master. I want you to know that you need to always be pushing your master or whoever's technically teaching you to explain. And it may get on their nerves, but you have to ask to explain, why are we doing this? Why are we securing this cable within 8 inches or 12 inches, depending on the type of box that we have? Why are we boring these holes in the middle of the frame and member? And when we don't, why are we putting this nail plate up? You get me? You have to ask these questions instead of just accepting things as gospel. I mean, obviously, teens today, people growing up today, younger generation, are asking all kinds of questions. Now, granted, they're also eating glue and dishwashing fluid or soap or whatever. But at the end of the day, we are in a generation where people want to ask questions and they want to act like they're in the know. So ask the questions. Be inquisitive. Be the person in the front row. Don't be the person in the back row. That type of thing. All right. And remember, the code book is not your enemy. So that's number 3. Learn the NEC daily. Get involved and learn. Okay. That's what our programs do. It helps you we can't do anything with the hands-on, but we can hit you with the mental part. And that's what our courses do here at the Academy. That's what we're focused on. We're focused on the mental part. Number 4, obviously, is going to go hand in hand with the others. You need to get real job site experience. It's hard to have a communication about something and learn the electrical trade without actually touching it and feeling it. And I think that's the one thing that I laugh about when people say, Paul, you're just a mouthpiece on podcasts and videos and things like that. They don't know me. They haven't researched me to realize that I'm an electrician who has been in the crawl spaces, crawled through the attics, okay, put in the switch gear. Things like that, put in the generators. I think they forget that because, again, they think the older guys never did it. And, electricity technology's changed, made things easier for us. Right now, you've got a tool that does almost everything for you. We didn't have that shit. We didn't have a tool that you could strip 500 kc mil. What we had was a damn knife. That's what we had, okay? And we used electrical tape as Band-Aids, okay? Different today. So, I mean, you got a tool for everything. Racketeer makes something for every freaking thing. We didn't have that. So running the wires is no different. Installing the cables are no different. It's just you have easier ways to do it now that makes you work smarter, not harder. But we didn't have that back then. But at the end of the day, principles are the same. Electrons are the same. The circuits flow the same. So the same things apply. Calculations still apply. So again, I don't listen to those people say that. They're just pounding their chest because they just don't get it. They're mentally not able to wrap their head around the fact that they're going to be 50 and 60 and 65 and 70 in a blink of an eye. And they're going to be looking back and saying, oh, shit. Now, one thing I will tell you is once you get to this stage, you decided your path. You know what your path is. You've contacted the state. You understand your path. The next thing, like I said, is you get into a program that's going to get you those hours you need, quick as you can get them. You might as well not kick that can down the road. Get your hours now. They don't expire. Okay, that's hands-on. That's the training part. That don't expire. Get it done. Knock your hours, whatever they may be in your state, out of the way. While you're doing that, you're working for somebody. You're getting that job experience, and that clock starts ticking. Now, my advice to you, even though you'll get a W-2, but there are going to be occasions where you may do some work, and I'm not condoning it, where you don't get a W-2. All I'm saying is you need to document. Keep your own ledger. Keep your own journal. Mark down your hours. I mean, look, people say, well, Paul, that's just being too technical. Dude, this is a trade. This is a profession. You can make great money in this profession. Don't take it lightly. I see too many videos online where people are joking about different things like this trade. Dude, this is a profession. Now, people can get hurt if you do things wrong here. And I see so many things done wrong on social media. I cringe. But, we're litigious. Is that it? Litigious? Litigious? Whatever. We're a society where people sue shit. So be careful what you do, okay? And do it right. But track your hours, okay? Now, once you do that, you're going to, you got to put your time in, okay? Rome wasn't built in a day, they say. And the same thing when it comes to being an electrician. You may think you know it all. You do not. I learn something new every day. When I look into the code book and I read something that I look at and go, oh, well, that's cool. This is why I love code changes, because it forces me to get back in there and read and say, whoa, okay. Maybe I didn't see that. A great example of that, is what is happening in 220.60 and in the new code, the 2026 code that changes, and it's 120.6, is understanding what you're dealing with when it comes to the things like when doing non-coincident loads. It's totally opened my eyes, understanding that's where we were at. But now it's so much clearer. And I thank the code making panel for doing that. And this is something that took place over the last couple cycles, but it was subtle and it was confusing in the 2020 and 2023, where the foundation was set up in the 2017 and then got clarified in the 2020 by the code panel, but it still didn't resonate. And it got messed up in the 2020. And now it's clear. Okay. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you need to listen, because I'll obviously be covering that in a video and a podcast. It's clear now. I get it. It's like an epiphany. It's like, oh, I understood what we were trying to achieve. Now, we were doing it right all along, but it's the methodology of how we did it was wrong. And I'll break it down in a future episode so you can say, oh, damn, now I get it. It was never about that 25%. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, the point now is put in your time, be patient. It's going to suck. The pay is not going to be great. You can do some side stuff. You might have to have a second job. Suck it up. Because at the end of the day, the other side of the rainbow is going to be great for this trade. Are you going to be a millionaire? No. But is the amount of money you make in your destiny? Absolutely. You're making $25 to $30 an hour as an electrician, but that's not enough for you. Then you're thinking, how do I make 60, 65, 70? Well, maybe ownership's the path. Maybe side hustle's the path. Maybe you work for somebody during the week, but you also have an emergency service that you work in the evenings or weekends or whatever you're doing. Your hustle years are your 20s to early 30s. Those are where you set the foundation for the comfort that you're going to experience in your late 40s, 50s, and 60s. I have said that multiple times, and it is the fact. You work your ass off in your 20s and your 30s. You burn the candle at both ends. Yes, you still might be raising a family. Yes, you might be out more than you want. Maybe you don't get to spend all that time with your kid. Welcome to life. Welcome to life. The goal is that what you do in your 20s and early 30s is setting the tone. And you notice I leave a gap in there, right? From the early 30s, what about the mid 30s and early 40s? Because you see that I jump straight to the late 40s to 50s and 60s. Because now there's a period in there that is your decision-making period, whether or not you go into business for yourself or whether or not you need a transition period. So your late 30s to your early 40s is typically that transition life period where you're like, okay, I reflect back all the hard work that I've done, all the hands-on, all the training, everything that I've done, right? And now that transition is, do I want to be my own boss? Do I want to be a lead for some company? And then I'm going to take that approximately 10 years between 35 and say 45. Am I going to take that 10 years and build my nest egg so that, again, I'm relaxed in my late 40s to my 50s and 60s? Yeah. Because you're definitely going to be hustling to get the experience and time in your 20s and your early 30s so that you can decide your path, whether it's your own boss. That's the point where you start making your money. If you plan your early years right. Now, again, that's not to discourage anybody that's already after 35 or 40. That is not what I'm saying. I'm just trying to lay out the path for a young person who looks at it and goes, what opportunities do I have? You have great opportunities. The earlier you get started, the better. The earlier you make a decision, the better. But it doesn't mean that somebody in their late 30s and early 40s can't start working that plan. You can. You're just a little late in the game, but you can get it. And you're probably more focused now because you realize your time is not as expansive as you thought it was. Okay? Not every plan is perfect. You can agree to disagree. I'm just giving you my thoughts. Okay? Now, once you have your hours, once you put in the time, and again, you've heard people, young people hate when people say this. You got to put in your time. Well, I know it now. No. No, you don't. You think you do, but you don't. You think you know, but you don't. Put in your time, quick as you can get to that point, right? I was lucky. I came right out of high school and I got my license. I was Virginia's youngest licensed journeyman electrician, and within a year, I was the master, younger than everybody. And then I started a business with my brother, AA Electric. We worked together for a while till we realized that we're probably better working apart than we are together as far as under a company's umbrella. I started my own electrical service specialist company, and we would subcontract work back and forth. I mean, I would work with him, but the beauty is that I could walk away. You see what I'm saying? There was a sense of freedom in that. So by the time I was in my mid-20s, I was already owning my own businesses. That's not the path that everybody would follow, but it is an opportunity for you. You can do that, even if you start small, just doing service work. I have other podcasts that talk about how you can actually be very lucrative in just targeting communities with where you live. It works, folks. Everybody's got a honey-do list. Everybody's got things that they want done. You just have to tackle it. So anyway, once you get all those hours, you follow that, you put in your time, you put in your dues, as they say. At this point, you got to get ready for an exam. That's when you want to get a program like ours, because the Fast Tracks program is going to help you prepare. But even before that, you need to make sure that along that time, you've been gathering your paperwork. You show proof of your training. You have employment verification. If the state requires a document signed by, you need to make sure that you treat this. And there's people that do this very sloppily. Okay. And I'm first to admit, I didn't have to do this because I got into it very early. My my experience and my hands-on and my hours of requirement was all documented by the vocational school. So it's very easy for me. Not so easy for folks today. You need to have a folder. You need to keep everything. You have verification of your experience, your training, your proof of your training, anything that shows the hours that you achieved wherever you're going to school. All those type of things you need to put together and keep, so that when you do apply to your state licensing board, you have every duck in a row. It's very hard for them to turn down something that you've done very diligently, properly. Okay? That's very hard for somebody to do that. Now, when that comes to the NEC, you make sure that you get in a good course. Do not do those crash courses on weekends, the 24-hour, 12-hour. Don't. It's a waste of money. They're just taking your money, folks. I'm just being honest, because I could do that every day of the week all around the country. I could do exam prep webinars, seminars, whatever. I just don't do it. It's a waste of money. You won't retain it. You won't keep it knowledge in you for a long period of time. You'll start losing it. And it a lot of times, because of the short amount of time, they want to teach you tips and tricks. There is no tips and tricks to learning and being an electrician. It's experience. It's putting in the time, that type of thing. So when you do get all that and it's time for you to take an exam, okay, and I tell people this all the time, if you've got the number of hours in the classroom and you've got the number of hands-on and you still don't understand the NEC, then you're not doing it right. Because by the time you peak and you get your hours, you should be ready. It's not like you, in my opinion, it's not like you study the NEC after you've met all these requirements. No, that is not true. You need to be interjecting training that's going to teach you the NEC while you're hands-on, while you're involved in it, while you're invested in it. That's the mentality that you have to have. Now, granted, I would say the vast majority of our students come to us after they've already accumulated their hours, and now they're just preparing for an exam. But you got to ask yourself, if I just spent 500 hours in training and 8,000 hours on the job, and you still don't know the NEC, you still don't understand why you're doing what you're doing, because everything we do in a building is based on a code. Everything, the number of services, how high they are, where they're spaced at, the size of it, all of it, whether you like it or not, is all revolved around the code. And I know people hate to hear that shit. They literally hate it. They're like, I don't need to know that code. Yeah, you do, and you do. You're doing it every day, but you just don't know why you're doing it. So make life easy for you. One big tip is to get a program like ours to learn the code while you're doing it. And I recommend one like ours only because it's written format and not just video only. Because videos are easy to forget what you just saw. And you think, I'll just go back and rewind it. No, you won't. No, you won't. You never go back. People just don't do it. That's just the nature of people. You don't think we don't track this stuff? Y'all know I have Fast Tracks Tube, right? I can see the amount of time that people watch videos. I can see all that analytic on the backside. We know what you're going to do, okay? Been doing this long enough. You're not going to do it. Now, some of you go back and watch things over again. Again, I can't say I speak for everybody, but the vast majority do not. Okay, so you may be the exception to the rule, but in general, people do not. Okay, so this is going to help you when it comes time to actually peak and take the exam. Okay. Also, just remember that the NEC changes every 3 years, so it's always helpful. And when you get licensed, you're going to have to take continuing ed classes to bring you up to speed on the significant changes. And that's typically, people ask, for example, is your Fast Tracks program good for continuing education credits? And it's not, because it's not designed to teach you what's changed. And usually those continuing educations are designed to show you what the changes are. Not to reteach you the code, not to take care of what you should already know, but what has changed. That type of thing. And it's what separates a wire puller from a professional electrician. That's the difference. how you learn, how you dedicate your time, how you study, how you make a commitment to the trade, that type of thing. So hopefully that's been easier for you to understand that anybody out there who gets into this trade, it's an amazing trade, but you have to start out and understand the path that you need, what are the hours you need, what your state requires, things like that first. Then you set your roadmap. Then you focus on finding a training program, and in that program, you'll get your hours, but also those programs will also give you credit for hands-on stuff they do in workshops and things like that. And also, when you're in a program like that, you also want to find a job, whether you're taking a helper job, an apprentice job, whatever. You might say, well, I can't afford it. Dude, it does not make any sense for you to be in an electrical vocational program trying to get hours and you're not out there, whether it's in the evenings or maybe you go to school in the night and you work in the day. You need to be working in the trade because simultaneously you need to be getting those hands-on hours. Otherwise, you're just behind the curve. Oh, I can't afford that. They don't make enough. Well, sorry. It is what it is. You're going to have to eat bologna for a while before you eat steak. You like that or not, but you're going to have a struggle if you get in the hours in vocational school, yet you don't have the hands-on hours because you're working at Tasty Freeze, and that is not specific to the electrical trade. I get it. I'm not talking about a part-time job. You got to pay ends meet, that type of thing. I get it. But you need to be focusing on where you're going to get your hands on. Also, you can do all this within the state's requirements at the shortest amount of time possible. That's what we're talking about. Okay. All right. So there you have it. The top kind of 5 things to do when you want to become a licensed electrician. If you're listening right now and you've been on the fence on whether you want to, become an electrician, you're in some dead end job. You're thinking, dude, I want something that's going to grow. And we're always going to need electricians. AI is not going to take this. Okay. The electrical trade is one of the most rewarding careers out there. You can earn while you learn. Okay. You don't need a college degree. You get to use your hands. You get to make things better. You protect people. You make things safer. You learn an amazing skill. Okay. And again, you want to learn the NEC. Our Fast Tracks programs can teach you the National Electrical Code, which you should be learning parallel with your hands-on. This is the mental part while you're learning the physical part. And that'll keep you on track to get your license. But don't think it's an overnight success. It doesn't matter whether it's plumbing, mechanical, building, or electrical. You cannot do something for 1 year and think, dude, I'm going to open my own business. I can make more money than that builder. That is not the mentality. You need to be in it for the long haul. Okay. Just got to focus and stay on the course, in the path, put in the time, but you need to know how much time. You need to know. And that's why you go to your state first and you find out what the roadmap is. And then you tailor the next couple years towards that roadmap. That's the secret to success. All right, folks. Till next time, stay safe. God bless. We'll catch you on an upcoming episode of Let's Ask Paul. But that answers the question, how do I get started in the electrical trade? You start at the bottom, you work your way to the top, and that's just how you do it. Peace.